tuned in to Radio Gold. This production of The Avengers burst in the door of spy and superhero adventure drama on South African radio in 1971, starring Donald Monat as John Steed and Diane Appleby as the wonderful Emma Peel. It was based on the Fine TV series, which was very popular from the start in the UK, and is an excellent example of radio's adaptation of the television medium. Part pop art, part superhero, and part adventure serial, this radio show had all of the excitement and intelligence of the original television hit. National TV wasn't available in South Africa until 1976, so radio was the only way the Avengers was popularized there, rising to almost cult status. It was produced as usually 6 serial episodes per week, and the cliff-hanging segments keep the action moving and always leading up to a thrill to be continued. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Radio Gold is proud to present The Avengers.
Now, from the makers of cold water Omo,
the bar of the Bull and Bear must be the most exclusive bar in the City of London. It is never frequented by any other than those who make their money in the city. Brokers, jobbers, bankers, etc. all gather there in their sober city dress, and fortunes are made and lost over a glass of sherry. One group, round a small table in the corner, were quite typical. Their names were Todhunter, Boardman, and Jago.
Your sherry, sir.
Oh, thank you. Well, Boardman?
Yeah, you were right, Todhunter. They upped the dividend. And that means, Jago, that you owe me a drink.
I'll sign the slip for sherry.
Very well, Mr. Jago. Here we are. Thank you.
The devil's that? Oh, sorry, men. The drink will have to wait. Wired for sound these days, eh?
Yes, a new gadget. Transistorized communication, a sort of a portable secretary. Henry put me onto it. I think he's got shares in the company that makes them. It's quite simple, really. When my office wants me, they call the answering service, and they transmit the bleep sounds. Well, that's the signal to call them back.
Oh, hadn't you better do so?
No, there's no need. It's just a reminder that it's time I left for our board meeting. Yeah, come on, Henry. Leave the sherry for Jago. We have work to do.
The Avengers. John Steed and Emma Peel, The Avengers.
So many women say, once an Omo user, always an Omo user. Because there's just no dirt that can stand up to the cleaning power of cold water Omo. It solves Mrs. Sutherland's washing problems for her.
Very dirty oil or grease marks. If you use cold water Omo, there's no trouble at all. It comes out very, very easily indeed.
There's no washing problem too difficult for cold water Omo. Over 1 million South African housewives have proved it.
Lux is the beauty soap chosen by beautiful film stars around the world. They choose Lux for its rich, moisturizing lather. Lux, a beauty treatment as you bathe.
Episode 1 of this story, in which John Steed and Emma Peel find they have business in the city, which starts when someone attempts to dial a deadly number. The man called Jago grinned cheerfully at Boardman and Todhunter as they left the table at the bar and walked sedately over to an old-fashioned hat stand. Todhunter removed his answering service transistor from his jacket pocket and slipped it into the outer pocket of his heavy tweed overcoat. As he did so, a newcomer to the bar seemed to collide with him.
Oh, I do beg your pardon. I'm so sorry. Quite all right. Excuse me.
Todhunter wasn't to know that the man had very skillfully taken the transistor from the overcoat pocket and switched another similar gadget in its place. The two friends left the bar, and a few minutes later they were back in their respective offices. Todhunter once again removed his overcoat, took the duplicate transistor, and clipped it inside his jacket top pocket. Then he joined the others in the boardroom.
I think there is no need to point out, gentlemen, that since the war, full employment and a rising standard of living have become the major economic requirements of this country, accompanied as is inevitable by inflation.
Todhunter droned on with his address. Various members, replete from luncheon in the Bull and Bear, fixed an expression of earnest concentration on their faces and closed their eyes. Back in the bar of the Bull and Bear, the man who'd bagged into Todhunter consulted his watch and moved to one of the minute telephones. He smiled grimly as he began to dial a number. In the boardroom, Todhunter was concluding his speech.
Therefore, gentlemen, the future for the industry looks very bright. For our company, I must say the outlook is healthy. Very healthy.
Not so healthy for Todhunter, who at that point swayed on his feet, clutched at his chest, tottered, and collapsed face downwards across the boardroom table, knocking over a water cone. A few hours later, John Steed walked slowly round the boardroom. When Mrs. Peel entered, he hardly glanced at her, but said,
"One really can tell a great deal about members of a board from the way they will scribble on the scrap pads. Doodling is the correct word, I believe. Now look at this. Repressed personality. Now, whereas this one shows a deep-seated frustration.
Well, whoever did it has my sympathy.
But this is more difficult. Mysterious. Now, he keeps his desires and feelings to himself. A secretive nature.
You might have drawn it yourself.
I beg your pardon, Mrs. Peel.
I have been summoned here with all urgency and no explanations. Do I have to guess why I'm here? Do you tell me straight, or do we have to play quiz games?
Steed took a folded evening paper from his coat pocket and slid it across the polished top of the boardroom table.
Stop press.
Chairman of Todhunter's dies. Share prices slashed.
It happened right there where you're standing, less than 2 hours ago.
Steed took a Hunter gold watch from his pocket, flipped it open, and consulted it.
Yes, 2 hours ago.
Well, that's an impressive watch. You?
No. Legacy from my Uncle Bertie. It plays jingle bells if you open the back. See.
How useful. Pity it's dented.
Battle of the Somme, 1916.
German bullet?
Canadian mule, actually. Yes, Todhunter died literally on this table 2 hours ago.
Look, I'm sorry to appear unsympathetic, but I don't see why it should be of all that interest to us.
He was the 6th company chairman dropped dead in the last year.
Thrombosis. Pressure of work.
Each time, the chairman was dynamic, virtually indispensable to his company, so the company stood to lose a good deal by his death.
Well, it could be overwork. People do drop dead of strain.
Question, did they drop, or were they pushed?
All 6 of them?
Why not?
Motive.
Your guess is as good as mine.
A man dies, share prices drop, company becomes cheaper and therefore easier to take over.
Fine, but for one thing, they weren't taken over.
Well, what next?
A little dabble in high finance.
Oh?
Yes. 6 chairmen with only one thing in common. A banker named Boardman. Now, see if you can get hold of any personal possessions that Todhunter had on him at the time of his death. I'll pay a visit to banker Boardman. We'll meet up later. Let's go, Mrs. Peel.
Boardman's, like most merchant bankers, operates from a parlour. A large ornate room with a grate, thick carpets, and 2 ornate desks at opposite ends of the room. The room itself is panelled and lined with portraits and framed accounts. There are 2 doors, one Mr. Henry Boardman's, and the other his partner John Harvey's. When John Steed entered, Henry Boardman stopped signing letters and rose to greet him.
My apologies, Mr. Steed. Will you take sherry and biscuits with me?
Thank you. It's a charming place you have here. Nice to see old traditions maintained.
Yeah, virtually unchanged in 147 years. Since the bank was founded, in fact. Well, you've come to us most highly recommended, Mr. Steed. Your bona fide is excellent. Yes, most excellent.
Thank you.
Yeah, the nature of your business?
Money.
Naturally.
Shall we say £1.5 million? All right, then let's make it 2 million clear. Nice round figure, eh? Helps keep the accounts tidy.
Mr. Steed.
Just for a start, of course. We may want to double that figure eventually, but...
Mr. Steed, I admire your attack, but even on the strength of these references, a loan of £2 million would be...
No, my dear chap, no, you misunderstand me. I haven't come here to borrow. I want a deposit.
Deposit? £2 million?
If we can agree on the proper way to invest it. You see, I represent a trust fund set up by one of the armed forces. We have very substantial funds to invest and thought that one of the better merchant banks might be the best way of placing them. More than that, I'm not at liberty to say at the moment. Not until I'm quite sure that your bank is the one to do business with. I'm sure you understand.
Oh, absolutely. You're looking the market over, so to speak.
So to speak, yes.
Well, Mr. Steed, I think you have made a wise choice in coming here first. This is your first call.
I can see you're as wily as your reputation, Mr. Boardman.
Can I offer you a cigar? A custom roll?
Oh, no, thank you. No, too early. Yes, I feel at home here already. The air of ordered calm, a feeling of solidarity, of financial wisdom. Oh, I say, did you once have a candle letter hanging on that wall?
Steed indicated an empty space with his umbrella. Yes, but how did you...
A friend of yours happened to mention it. It was actually he who first suggested I came here. Poor fellow, Norman Todhunter.
Todhunter, yes, indeed. Tried to do too much, poor fellow. John. Mr. Steed, I'd like you to meet my partner, John Harvey.
How do you do, Mr. Steed? Glad to know you. Did I hear you mention Todhunter? You a friend of his?
Well, we were acquaintances.
Pushed himself too hard, to the limit. It's a familiar story these days, I'm afraid.
Yes, very familiar. You have been having some bad luck of late, haven't you? 6 company chairman in less than a year.
Yes, indeed. Well, Mr. Steed, what do you make of us? A bit archaic, you think? Trappings of a bygone age? I'm afraid we still judge the man, if he's a credit risk or not, by the color of his socks.
Steed lifted an elegant shoe and showed a length of sock.
Dark grey silk with a discreet motive. I hope I qualify.
I'm sure you do. Oh, excuse me.
Oh, by the way, Mr. Boardman, could you put me on to a good broker?
The best. Frederick Ewell. Use him myself. This car will introduce you.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, and this is my address. I'm giving a little house party on Thursday night. You know, I'd be most honored if you could attend.
I'd be delighted.
Mrs. Peel was having a far less pleasant afternoon. There was no offer of sherry and biscuits at Maccombie's funeral parlour.
Excuse me, do you happen to be the gentleman who dealt with the late Mr. Todhunter?
The Todhunter? Oh, yes, the mahogany and walnut, the velvet lined, the solid brass handles, the Gothic style. I prefer the Corinthian fluted myself.
Oh. Well, I've come to pick up his personal effects. I have the authority here to remove all he had on him. There won't be an autopsy, will there?
Autopsy? Why should there be? The doctor signed the death certificate. Thrombosis. Why should there be an autopsy?
You didn't notice anything peculiar about the body?
Oh, slight bruise above the heart, that's all. These things are over... Oh, that's funny. It's gone.
What's gone?
One of those bleep gadgets for answering service. It's gone, and yet I took it out of his pocket myself. His top pocket. It was clipped to his top pocket.
About level with the heart?
Yes, I suppose it would be. Odd, isn't it?
Very odd. Very odd indeed.
Shield gives a confidence that actually shows.
In your eyes.
Put on Shield deodorant and it's dry in seconds. That's the way it stays right through the day. Shield never makes you feel sticky. It just protects you and keeps you dry, feminine, fresh. Wear Shield and the only thing you show is confidence.
Shield gives a confidence that actually shows.
In your eyes. In your eyes.
No dirt can stand up to the cleaning power of cold water Omo.
Mrs. Whelan had to wash greasy overalls.
And I thought, oh, well, I won't worry. I'll stick it into cold water, Omo, and sure enough, every bit of grease is out.
Once an Omo user, always an Omo user.
The Avengers.
Listen every evening, Monday to Friday, to John Steed and Emma Peel, The Avengers, brought to you by the makers of Cold Water Omo. The Avengers, Donald Monat as John Steed and Diane Appleby as Emma Peel, is adapted and directed by Dennis Paulbig and produced by David Gooden.
Let's take a short intermission. The Best of Dimension X from Radio Gold. Dimension X was the first sci-fi anthology series to utilize published stories from established science fiction authors, which gave the series an instant status of credibility to hardcore fans. Stay tuned. Episode 2 starts in just a few seconds.
Now, from the makers of Cold Water Omo...
Mrs. Peel was paying a visit to Macombi's funeral parlour. She interviewed Macombi himself.
Excuse me, do you happen to be the gentleman who dealt with the late Mr. Todhunter?
Todhunter?
Mm-hmm.
Ah, yes, the mahogany and walnut, the velvet-lined solid brass handles, the Gothic style. I prefer the Corinthian fluted myself.
Well, I've come here to pick up his personal effects. I have a written authorization here. There won't be an autopsy, will there?
No, why should there be? The doctor signed the certificate. Thrombosis.
You didn't notice anything peculiar about the body?
Oh, slight bruise above the heart, that's all. His things are over... Oh, that's funny. It's gone.
What's gone?
One of those bleep gadgets for an answering service. It's gone, and yet I took it out of his pocket myself. His top pocket. It was clipped in his top pocket.
About level with the heart?
Yes. Yes, I suppose it would be. Just about on a level with the heart.
The Avengers.
John Steed and Emma Peel, The Avengers.
Softness is a thing called comfort.
Comfort is the wonderful new fabric conditioner that not only softens, but actually rinses out hardness, rinses in a new kind of softness. Comfort leaves your wash refreshingly young and bouncy again. Just a little comfort in the final rinse gives a lot of comfort to your wash.
Softness is a thing called comfort.
Shirley Ann Field chooses Lux for her complexion.
I always use Lux. I find it so very rich and creamy, and I love the perfume.
Like Shirley Ann, choose Lux for your complexion. Lux, a beauty treatment as you bathe.
Episode 2 of this story, in which John Steed and Emma Peel attempt to play at bulls and bears. And there is more trouble caused by someone's ability to dial a deadly number. John Steed, investigating the strange deaths of several company chairmen, had called upon Henry Boardman, the merchant banker, and over sherry and biscuits had got to know a little of the company's business. He'd met John Harvey, Boardman's partner, and been invited to a dinner party. On the whole, it wasn't a bad afternoon's work. Steed had asked for the name of a reputable broker, and had been put on to Frederick Yule. That was Steed's next port of call. Yule's office gave evidence of his favourite hobby, fishing. Cases of stuffed fish lined the walls, and even when Yule was working, he was sorting out fishing tackle, tying on dry flies while talking on a phone cradled between his jaw and shoulder.
It's declaration day tomorrow. The shares have gone down £1. You have options for 10,000. So I leave the arithmetic to you. Now look, the intercom's going. I'll call you later. Yes?
Mr. Steed is still waiting, Mr. Yule.
All right. Show him in, please.
Mr. Steed.
Come in, Mr. Steed. Come in. That'll be all, Suzanne. Sorry to keep you, Mr. Steed. I understand that Boardman sent you. How is Henry?
Flourishing.
Yeah. Now, what can I do for you?
Tell me, do you know a company called Castle's Tin?
Yes.
Well, Chappie in my club seems to think they're a good speculation.
There are 2 occasions in a man's life when he shouldn't speculate. When he can afford it and when he can't.
Yes, well, thank you for the advice.
That's not mine. Mark Twain. Now, he was another fisherman. There's nothing to touch it, you know, fishing. The thrill of pulling in a really big one. Do you fish, Mr. Steed?
Well, you might say I was always fishing around.
Yeah, I can't get away as often as I should like, you know. Scotland, the place, you know. Caught a salmon last year, as big as... Well, it was pretty big. Now, can I offer you some
sherry and biscuits? Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Suzanne, see to the sherry and biscuits, will you please?
Yes, Mr. Yule.
Now, where were we? Castle's Tin.
That's right.
Sturdy sort of company.
The friend who gave me the tip's having a lot of success on the market lately, but must admit, I don't understand how the shares have gone down every day, but he's still coining it in.
Yeah, can be done.
You can make money out of failure?
Ever heard of a thing called a put option?
Vaguely.
You take a put option when you think the share price is going to fall. You start by selling the shares, the price drops, or you hope it does, and you have an option to buy them back at the new low price. The difference is yours.
Complex. Definitely not for the amateur.
Yeah, very profitable when you pull it off.
The whole thing depends on the shares falling in price.
Yeah.
Of course, if you had the means of foreseeing the future and perhaps influencing it...
that would be another thing entirely. What was the name of the company your friend dabbled in?
Todd Hunters.
Stupid of me. Stuck a hook in my thumb.
I understand it was quite a killing.
Yule looked up from his fishing tackle in mild surprise.
Well, that is the correct term, isn't it?
Sherry, Mr. Yule. I think you should know that Amalgamated Industries are down 2 points. And Ben Jago is on the phone. Shall I have him put through to you here?
No. I'll go outside and speak to him. We must buy 20,000 Amalgamated at once. I won't be a moment, Mr. Steed. Help yourself to Sherry. Suzanne will show you some investment prospects while you wait.
Suzanne poured the sherry and handed Steed a glass. Then she took from a filing cabinet a sheaf of papers.
I think I should explain. I'm just a babe in the financial woods. Perhaps you could help me with the finer points.
Well, I'll try.
Steed perched himself on the desk, very near to Yule's secretary. Keep your eyes on the folio, Steed.
This is just a suggested portfolio. It means that your capital would be spread equally through the key industries. So much in steel, so much in oil, so much in industrials, and so on.
Fascinating.
This suggested scheme would mean an initial investment of about £50,000 in round figures.
Round figures, eh?
Not those kind of round figures, Steed.
There really isn't much more to explain. It's all straightforward enough. Our investment suggestions are carefully selected, tried and tested.
By Ben Jago? He is a client of yours, isn't he? His name is banded around the city as a man to watch.
Oh, yes, he's very successful. One of our best clients.
How does he do it? Crystal ball? Foresight? I mean, he does dabble a lot in put options, doesn't he? Always one jump ahead, sensing when the market's going to be just right.
Well, experience, I suppose. Nevertheless, it is uncanny sometimes, like his last success.
Oh, and that was?
Todd Hunter and Company. He took out options a week ago, holding her for 100,000, and it paid off. Still, that's Ben Jago for you.
It was inevitable that John Steed should find his way to the bar of the Bull and Bear. That's where the money action is, and that's where one had a jolly good chance of meeting Ben Jago. A loudspeaker was giving the latest information as Steed entered and headed for a corner table.
Coppers were quietly firm but made a mixed showing. Oils hardened, but rubbers were neglected. Banking and insurance showers were on the dull side.
Waiter, What the devil is a blue chip special?
Oh, it's one layer of prawns, one a scrambled egg, mayonnaise, and lightly toasted rye bread. I can recommend it, sir.
Oh, good. Then at least one of us will enjoy it.
A coffee, sir?
Quinoa with just a dash. A vodka to start with.
Thank you, sir. Of course you shared while you're waiting?
It'll take far too long.
Anything further, sir?
Yes, is Mr. Ben Jago in here?
Oh, yes, sir. There he is, sir. Look, down there at the end of the bar, making notes on the back of an envelope. That's Mr. Jago.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much, waiter.
Steed tipped the waiter, casually picked up his newspaper, and noticing a very attractively dressed woman leave Jago's side, moved across to the stool. Jago was still doing calculations when Steed said,
Excuse me, aren't you Ben Jago?
Yes, that's right.
We share the same broker.
Charlie Bingham.
No, Ewell, Brian Ewell.
One can't be too careful. Sit down, Mr.
Steed, John Steed. I do apologize for the interruption.
No, not at all, not at all. They put you into Gibbs Electronics?
Not yet, no.
See, they don't. Don't like the smell of them.
Oh, well, thank you for the tip.
Your vodka, sir.
Oh, thank you. No ice.
House rule, sir.
Really?
Oh, a dealer from Wall Street once asked for a bourbon on the rocks. 2 brokers dropped dead on the spot.
Tell me, Jacob, how is all this done? I mean, it's as remote as water dividing to me.
Oh, mainly by guess and good luck.
Oh, I don't believe it. Ben Jago, one of the shrewdest in the city. That's what my guidebook says.
Then it's time to buy yourself another guidebook.
No rules you can offer me?
Buy when they're friendless. Never wrong to take a profit. They're only half-truths.
All of them. How do you know about Todd Hunters, for instance? I mean, that was more than a half-truth.
It was a hot tip from our broker.
Wish he'd told me about it.
Patience, Mr. Steed, patience. There's a devil a lot of fiddling before Rome was burned, you know.
Yes, well, just remember if there's a fiddle going on, I'd like to get in on it.
Don't take too many risks. Remember, even Nero got his fingers scorched. Good day, Mr. Steed.
John Steed wondered vaguely what Mrs. Peel had been up to. He hoped she wasn't branching out on her own and getting into trouble. Knowing Mrs. Peel as he did, that was a forlorn hope. She'd been checking on the possessions of the late Mr. Todhunter, and when she'd found out that the transistor receiver that he carried for the answering service was missing, she immediately started to check up. In the foyer of Warner's answering service, she paused at the desk and rang the bell.
Oh, good afternoon. I'm J.P. Warner of Warner's Answering Service. Can I help you?
Yes. I'd like to know more about the service you offer.
Oh, splendid in its simplicity,
Mrs. Peel.
Ah, yes. The scheme operates along the lines of many used in hospitals. Subscriber carries a bleep for his person. And then if he's ever wanted, the machine bleeps and he takes a radio message telling him who wants him and what the telephone number is.
What's the range of this service?
The scheme is, in the main, confined to the city of London.
I see. So it's more or less limited to brokers and financiers, etc.
That's the idea.
At that moment, a man came down the steps. He held a tool bag in one hand. Emma frowned. He looked familiar.
It ought to be all right now, Mr. Warner. Needed rewiring, that's all.
Oh, splendid, Fitch, splendid. Thank you.
Who was that man? Anyone important?
Oh, no. No, Fitch is the resident mechanic. Quite bright. Backroom boy in the war, I'm told. Now, Mrs. Peel.
You supplied one of these bleep devices to a relative of mine, Mr. Norman Todhunter. Tell me, Mr. Warner, did you ever get it back?
Should we have done?
Yes. He died. It's missing. I wondered, did you ever get it back? Well, Mr. Warner, did you?
And with a vicious uppercut, Jimmy Anderson finishes trimming his whole hedge in just 3 hours, 11 minutes. Great work, Jimmy. Do you play any other sport?
Yes, dominoes.
You're looking pretty cool, Jimmy. What deodorant do you use?
Shield for sportsmen, of course.
Why?
It works.
Shield for Sportsmen deodorant won't stick, sting, or stain. In aerosol or roll-on, it's made to keep sportsmen cool and dry. Think what it can do for you.
The cleaning power of cold water Omo gives you the superb cleanness you want from a washing powder. Listen to Mrs. Baxter of Claremont.
It really is good, you know. I mean, it's unbelievable, really, that it could be so good, you know.
Once an Omo user, always an Omo user.
The Avengers.
Listen every evening, Monday to Friday, to John Steed and Emma Peel, The Avengers, brought to you by the makers of Cold Water Omo.
Let's take a short intermission. Nero Wolfe made his larger-than-life radio show debut on July 5, 1943. This intelligent detective show, based on the Rex Stout novels, proved to be a natural for classic radio. Throughout the show's run, Santos Ortega, Louis Van Rooten, Francis X. Bushman, and Sidney Greenstreet all filled the voluminous chair of Nero Wolfe. As well, a large assortment of actors played the part of every blonde's hero, Archie Goodwin. The Adventures of Nero Wolfe show remained popular on the airwaves in different versions for 8 years, from 1943 to 1951. Stay tuned for episode 3 of The Avengers.
Now, from the makers of Cold Water Omo.
In the small reception office of Warner's answering service, a man finished working on a fuse box. He closed the box, gathered up his tools, and walked up to Warner, who was standing talking to Mrs. Peel.
It ought to be all right now, Mr. Warner. Needed rewiring, that's all.
Oh, splendid, Fitch, splendid, thank you.
That an important member of your staff?
No, he's the resident mechanic. Something of a genius.
Vaguely familiar. I think I must have seen him before.
Oh, I doubt it. Fitch isn't exactly social. Keeps in the background, you know, very much so. In fact, I believe that during the war, he was very much a backroom boy. Funny fellow, you know. Give him a couple of bits of wire, you'll have a shortwave radio before you can say Marconi. Oh, but I'm digressing, Mrs. Peel. What can I do for you?
You supplied one of your bleep devices to a friend of mine, Norman Todd Hunter. He died. I wondered if you ever got it back.
Very easy way to find out, Mrs. Peel. The ledger.
Warner crossed over to a counter, delved beneath it, and pulled out a large ledger. He began paging through it.
Peters, Thomas, True Goody. Fantastic name. Yep. Todd Hunter. No, it was never returned to us. I wonder why.
The Avengers.
John Steed and Emma Peel, The Avengers.
Softness is a thing called comfort.
Comfort is the wonderful new fabric conditioner that not only softens but actually rinses out hardness, rinses in a new kind of softness. Comfort leaves your wash refreshingly young and bouncy again. Just a little comfort in the final rinse gives a lot of comfort to your wash.
Softness is a thing called comfort.
sparkle it the way you like. All over the outside, werewolves, pink pussycat meow.
Episode 3 of this story, in which an attempt is made to knock out John Steed, and Emma Peel realizes that someone could quite easily kill him if they were able to dial a deadly number. John Steed found himself becoming more and more involved in the world of high finance. He'd got to know and impress Henry Boardman and his partner John Harvey. Boardman and Harvey were merchant bankers and completely taken in by Steed's unlimited credit and fantastic letters of recommendation. Steed had got himself a broker, Brian Frederick Yule, and made many inquiries into the business dealings of such city men as Ben Jago, who seemed to have unerring judgment when it came to investments. At a dinner party at the Boardmans, Steed arrived, in immaculate evening togs, rather early. He gazed around the penthouse suite, accepted a drink from a waiter, and turned to John Harvey.
Yes, this man, Ben Jago's amazing. The last success he had depended almost completely on the death of the company chairman. It's almost as if he knew that Todd Hunter would die.
No, that's fantastic. Jago is shrewd, we all know that, but that's too shrewd to be true.
My reaction entirely. Here's our host.
Yes.
Steed, good evening to you. Steed, I don't think you've been introduced to my wife.
No, I haven't had that pleasure.
Ruth, my dear. This is Mr. John Steed.
How do you do?
I'm delighted to meet you.
Thank you. You are going into business with my husband.
Well, let's say he's showing me the ropes.
Oh, you are not in the city.
Not often.
And let me borrow, Mr. Steed. There is someone I would like him to meet.
Oh, pleasure. That's the beauty of parties. One's always meeting people. It's a small world, Mrs. Boardman, isn't it?
Ah, so they say, Mr. Steed. So they say.
Ruth Boardman linked her arm casually through John Steed's and led him across the room to where a beautiful young woman was talking to a group of solemn-faced, white-haired men.
My dear, this is Mr. Steed, another non-financial animal. Mr. Steed, Mrs. Emma Peel.
Delighted to meet you, Mrs. Peel.
Good evening, Mr. Steed.
My dear, is dinner in 10 minutes, all
Oh,
right?
I will go and see about it.
Mrs. Peel is another of our clients from Barbados. She arrived recently.
Recently?
I arrived last week.
You surprise me.
Why's that?
Oh, so little tan.
It's the rainy season.
Ah, yes, of course.
Excuse me, Mr. Boardman. You have to make a telephone call.
Yes. Please excuse me.
Don't be long now, dear. It is your idea to eat early.
I admire your view. Beauty of a penthouse, of course.
Oh, it is pleasant, isn't it? Restricting, but it is better for Henry. He can have a rubber of bridge at his club and still be home for dinner.
You've given up the country house?
Alas, yes. Would you excuse me again? I won't be a moment, but Henry is so fussy about the temperature of his wine.
The rainy season, indeed.
Well, it's true. The annual average, 36 inches, half of which falls between September and November. Next question.
How long do we have to wait for the rest of the guests? I'm starving.
One guest at the party was late. It was Yule, the broker. He knew it would be impossible for him to go home and change, and so he'd brought an evening tuxedo along to his office. He washed and changed swiftly, whistling as he did so. It was while he was fastidiously buttoning up the buttons of his waistcoat that he realized it was rather a tight fit. He was puzzled to find something sewn into the top pocket.
What the devil? It's a bleeper. No! No!
Yule tore at the waistcoat, ripping the buttons in an attempt to get free, but the bleep went off. Yule clutched at his chest and fell across the desk, a death exactly like that of Todd Hunter's. Back at the Boardmans, the dinner party had proceeded to the coffee, brandy, and cigar stage. There was one place, Yule's, which remained empty and untouched.
Typical. A fine broker, but his manners are atrocious.
Oh, there may be some logical explanation.
I was right about the wine, wasn't I, Mr. Steed?
Oh, indeed, yes, Mr. Harvey. And I adore your sherry. And the brandy, impeccable.
I thought brandies were judicious.
Not according to the authorized text.
Are you interested in wines, Mrs. Peel?
In moderation, Mr. Harvey.
I was referring to your interest, not your capacity.
So was I.
We have a wine tasting at the bank cellar next Tuesday. If you'd care to come along, Mrs. Peel.
I should be delighted.
Perhaps Mr. Steed would care to attend, too.
Steed produced a miniature pocket diary immediately.
Let me see. You'll say Tuesday next.
Yes.
Ladysmith relieved 1900. A diary is a lovesome thing. That's fine. What time?
6 o'clock. We'll see how keen your palate really is.
Well, in which case, if I may, I'll leave you and go into strict training.
Just as you wish, Mr. Steed.
Mrs. Peel, can I drop you somewhere?
No. You're not going to deprive us of Mrs. Peel's company.
Oh, we will see she gets home safely.
I have my own car.
Oh, well, I'll say good night then, and many, many thanks for your hospitality.
Thank you, Mr. Steed. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Steed had parked his car in the garage of the basement. It was very dark. Steed's footsteps echoed hollowly as he tried to locate the parking bay. Steed walked jauntily forward, still smoking his cigar. Then he stopped.
That's strange. Cigarette stub. Still smouldering. We are not alone.
Steed unbuttoned his evening jacket and reached for his gun. At that moment... Steed wheeled round. The headlights of what appeared to be a large car flashed onto him. The headlights separated as two motorcycles roared down the length of the garage. Steed dodged the first bike. The sinister rider, clothed all in black leather and goggles, skidded round. The second made for Steed, lying on the ground. Steed threw himself aside in the nick of time. His gun fell from his hand. The bike seemed to be coming at him from all directions. Steed, caught in the lights, made a perfect target. The first bike returned to the attack. Steed whipped off his evening cape and threw it over the head of the cyclist. Blinded, the driver lost control, smashing into a packing crate. Steed sprinted for his fallen gun. The second rider swerved and headed to cut him off. Steed got to the gun, fell forward and fired at the approaching headlight. The headlight went out, but somehow the rider managed to regain control. He roared up the concrete ramp, his footrests striking a shower of sparks. He managed to avoid the doorpost and hurtled away into the dark. Steed recovered his breath, moved to his car, and snapped on its spotlight. Mrs. Peel's voice said,
Pistol practice at this time of the night? Is he dead?
Steed looked down at the body of the motorcyclist.
Broken neck by the look of it. Dangerous sport, motorcycling. Well, let's take a closer look at him.
Steed bent down and removed the dead man's helmet.
Far cry from sherry and biscuits. He was a waiter. Yule's, I think. The Boardmans were pretty anxious that you shouldn't leave with me, weren't they?
Well, you think that they're in...
Yes, indeed. They didn't want you butting in on a little surprise they'd prepared for me.
You're guessing.
Well, I know that.
Well, now what? Go back and confront them with this?
No, I think that first, I'd better have a word with my broker.
Right. Shall we go, Steed? I really think you need a bodyguard this evening.
Applying for the job?
If the pay's all right.
Well, pay's not good, but I'll make sure there's plenty of perks. Let's go.
A short while after that, with the aid of his skeleton keys, Steed obtained entrance to Yule's offices. Yule's body now lay on its back. Papers were scattered all over the room. Steed examined the body thoroughly.
Look, Mrs. Peel, waistcoat pocket.
Ripped away completely.
Yes, that's really what you call having your pocket picked.
Oh, no wonder he didn't feel like dinner.
But he was planning to come. Those clothes. He was dressing and...
And then, not the usual old heart attack this time. At a rough guess, I'd say he'd been dead about 3 hours.
Spoken like an expert.
Oh, I've been taking a refresher course in applied medicine. As a matter of fact, when you called me so urgently to join you on this case,
I interrupted your studies. Never mind. Gives you a chance to put the theory into practice, doesn't it?
A chance I could have done without. But I'll take a small side bet with you, Steed, even the old champagne supper, that there's a slight bruise over this dead man's heart. Any bets?
What is this new kind of cleanness women are discovering for their dishes?
It's sunlight cleanness.
What's sunlight cleanness?
A fresh, sparkling cleanness you've never known before.
Why fresh?
New Sunlight Liquid has real lemon juice.
And sparkling?
Sunlight Liquid is concentrated. It's got the greatest grease-cutting power to give you sparkling dishes every time.
And new Sunlight Liquid with real lemon juice means real economy. Just 1 teaspoonful washes a whole sinkful of dishes sparkling clean. Sunlight Clean.
There's just no dirt that can stand up to the cleaning power of cold water Omo. Mrs. Gray of Durban has this to say.
I can't even explain it. It astounded me. I was really and truly very astounded.
Once an Omo user, always an Omo user.
The Avengers.
Listen every evening, Monday to Friday, to John Steed and Emma Peel, The Avengers, brought to you by the makers of Cold Water Omo.
Now get on over to the Radio Gold channel and find the exciting 3-part conclusion to this adventure. Radio Gold is a 3 9's Fine radio production. See you next time.